I mean, Bitcoin inevitably would go higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about just number go up, but I do think it's a smart strategy. It's definitely going to be a lucrative strategy, and I do think it's good for Bitcoin adoption. And I do think more, not just for the platform plays, which is just going to be purely about a Bitcoin accumulation strategy, which I think those are going to work, and those are very good vehicles. They are smartly arbitraging the capital markets, and so that's a smart play. But it's also very encouraging when you see just companies allocating a certain amount of their reserves to Bitcoin. I think that will be the next play, which is also going to be very important.
Welcome back to the Block Fuel Podcast. We are here live in sunny Orlando, Florida. We are here with Paul McCaffery from KBW. So shout out to the True North team for letting us use their beautiful studio here. But Paul, welcome first and foremost.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to chatting.
So KBW, massive investment bank. You guys are part of Stifel. For those that are unfamiliar, though, can you just give us a quick background, on yourself, and then KBW as a whole, and then we'll dive into the Bitcoin faction here.
Sure. I'm Paul McCaffery from New York. Unfortunately, Mets and Jets fan, so that's been a brutal existence. But lived in New York most of my life. I joined KBW 23 years ago, so I've been with KBW for 23 years. And we were originally known as sort of the bank that banks banks. We're a full investment bank. We do equity trading, all that kind of stuff, as well as investment banking. And a lot of the way we were formed 65 years plus ago was just when banks merged, we would be involved in those mergers. And as those banks evolved and Citibank became Citigroup, so all of a sudden we need to learn insurance. And then all these different banks had payment businesses and asset management business, so we had to learn those. And that's also what brought us into fintech. Meanwhile, 10 years ago, Stifel, which is our parent company, they've acquired about 30 different boutiques over the years. They acquired KBW to be their financial service and fintech boutique arm specialist. So we've retained the brand KBW. We're our own FINRA reporting entity under the Stifel umbrella. So Stifel's our parent, a great parent. But we have continued to focus on fintech and financials, and that accidentally brought us into blockchain and specifically into Bitcoin back in 2017 when Silvergate, which was a bank, kind of a little, just a regular commercial bank in California, when they decided to transition into becoming a Bitcoin bank. And so myself and my colleagues, we raised Alan Lane and team $114 million of private capital to create the Silvergate Exchange Network. And that was the beginning of our journey into blockchain, crypto, investment banking. We never left. So unlike a lot of these big bulge brackets, we have not been torced. We've been there since 2017, and through the Stifel parent, it's been even reinforced because we have been teamed up with the Canadian entity GMP First Energy. They were the ones that brought Galaxy public and a lot of the miners. So we're all now on the same team. And more recently, we acquired Brian Garnier out of Paris, a growth investment bank that sold Medico to Ripple, did big transactions for Bitfury. So it's exciting. We're doing a lot in blockchain and crypto, and it's been and Bitcoin in particular.
So it's been tumultuous. If you've been in the space now for a little bit yourself. Now we were just talking. You said it's a 12 out of 10 environment right now. Things are super exciting for you. Yeah. Meanwhile, there's tariffs going on. Trump's not allowing, I think, movies to be made here. Another guy was just talking about it. So there's a lot of crazy things that are happening, but there's always, I think a lot of crazy things happening in the world. But what are you kind of bullish on in general, if you're able to share? What you're able to share? Yeah,
digital asset M&A. It's hilarious because I sit in my fintech-wide group meetings and everyone's complaining about the tariffs and the market slowdown and some IPOs getting pulled. And I kind of chuckle inside because it's still a 12 out of 10 compared to what we've dealt with under the Gensler and Biden administration. It's just really the choke point wasn't a myth. It was real. And it wasn't just with the banks. It was, from the administration. It was from the SEC. There was no access to public markets. The only access to capital was venture, and they were all looking for token deals. And now there's new companies coming back and saying, yes, I'd be willing to buy equity into these businesses. There's strategics. We're involved in a lot of businesses where now there's non-crypto native companies are the ones that are actually making are making the strongest push for some of the crypto related assets. So it's very encouraging, and it's exciting because the conversations are continuing, and the access to the public markets are real. I think most recently, and this is in the spirit of being here at the strategy conference, which we're grateful for being included in that. But there's a lot of copycats out there. Yep. There's a lot of folks that really want to do this in various markets. I'm aware of several different markets where there's going to be new entities popping up to emulate the strategy playbook, and we're involved in some of those.
Yeah. And it seems like we want that though, right? Because like we were just talking to Eric Semler, and I think he was saying that like a rising tide, raises all boats. So do you find the way you phrased it, maybe I just missed the tonality there, but it almost sounded like it wouldn't be the best thing, but in general, wouldn't it be great if more corporations started doing that? I mean, Bitcoin inevitably would go higher.
Yeah, I mean, it's not all about just number go up, but I do think it's a smart strategy. It's definitely going to be a lucrative strategy, and I do think it's good for Bitcoin adoption. And I do think more, not just for the platform plays, which is just going to be purely about a Bitcoin accumulation strategy, which I think those are going to work, and those are very good vehicles. They are smartly arbitraging the capital markets, and so that's a smart play. But it's also very encouraging when you see just companies allocating a certain amount of their reserves to Bitcoin. I think that will be the next play, which is also going to be very important. So I really applaud when you see operating companies also just open up their treasury strategy to bringing in Bitcoin.
Yeah. We just saw New Hampshire, so the live free or die state.
Yeah.
I think they said 10% of their treasury is going to go.
It's big. I mean, it's big because you've seen some of the states you thought would approve they've been, getting passed through the House and the Senate, the state level, and then getting vetoed So in Florida, they you would think home of Mar-a-Lago and
they nixed it.
Yeah, they nixed it at the so it's temporary. I'm sure they'll bring it back in a different format, but I do think the states will lead before we get it at the federal level, so it'll be great to see. I'm working with actually a company right now who is very focused on helping the states on that front with some Bitcoin-backed bonds. So it's I think this good things are going to come from some of the states, and it's going to create some knock-on effects for other states. I wouldn't call it FOMO, but I would say that it's going to open up the doors because a lot of people they don't want to be leaders they want to follow, and I think there's a few leaders that will allow that to happen.
Yeah. No, I don't know if this is the best analogy, but I remember seeing like DraftKings and like sports gambling. It's like state by state. Eventually, all these states are in debt. They're like, all right, maybe I should take advantage of something like this. And so I hope that more and more states follow. On the institutional side of things, what are we past that hump in terms of where like people? I've talked to a few folks that have been on the like investment banking side, and like early on, people were like making fun of Bitcoin. Do you think this idea that Bitcoin's a scam is past that hump now, or do you still have friends in the industry that are like, this is a scam, this is not happening?
No, it's still bifurcated. There's a lot of people who basically are just permanently scarred by the 2022 disasters, and some folks dip their toes in or feet in or legs in, and got chopped off, and so it's I do think Bitcoin specifically has been validated, and people are more comfortable with Bitcoin specifically. That said, and I keep trying to change the narrative because a lot of people keep saying crypto, and you say Bitcoin or digital assets, right? And I do think that it's going to be important to see other use cases. The stablecoin use case is clear. And I do think that's helpful overall for Bitcoin as well, because it's going to, by having stable coins, it's going to force institutions to have digital wallets. And once you have digital wallets, then it's easier to interact with a digital security or digital, or not a security in the case of Bitcoin, a digital asset. And so I do think stable coins will improve adoption at the institutional level and at the retail level, because I think digital wallets will become ubiquitous, and that's what's needed. And the payment side with stablecoins may be the enabler to do that. There is a little bit of a crowding out, because if you think about it, why in Venezuela and some of these countries were they early adopters of buying Bitcoin? It's because they didn't have access to dollars. There were like black markets or blue markets or whatever we want to call it for dollars, where you'd have to buy them discounted. So a lot of people would go find Bitcoin because it was a better asset than owning their local currency. Those countries, a lot of those countries, those individuals actually would rather have stablecoins because they don't want the volatility. That doesn't mean that's the case everywhere. So there is, interestingly, a little bit of a crowding out from the benefits of stablecoins becoming accessible internationally versus Bitcoin from the retail level. But I think it's rising tide will lift all boats over time. And more importantly, the phase of institutional and ideally sovereign adoption is upon us.
Yeah. No, stablecoins to me is fascinating. It seems like a no-brainer that they would just want that because they're buying treasuries, right? And the country benefits from that if ultimately dollars or more people are bringing money over here for those stablecoins. Over the next 3 to 5 years, you said 10 out of 12 or 12 out of 10 environment. I'm not going to ask you to make a Bitcoin prediction of price, but do you foresee? You mentioned M&As coming up. I look around at some of these conferences, not this one, but you go to Consensus or some of the other ones, and you look around, and you just think sadly, 3 to 5 years from now, half of them are going to be gone, right? Or maybe
That's any industry though.
Yeah.
In terms of building businesses.
Okay.
So that's just natural. I think the companies that made it through these last 3 or 4 lean years of not being able to access capital markets have really created some super powerhouse businesses that I think they're going to be the beneficiaries of being able to roll up, whether it's an acqui-hire or just doing transactions that can get them into different spaces. So I think we're going to see, we've already started to see the emergence of some of the winners. And I think that will continue to happen. And there's going to be non-crypto players who want to get into space or digital assets.
And that's what, me and Jody always talk about this too, is just in terms of are people going to go buy these L2s, or are these banks just going to build something themselves? I mean, we see it with Onyx, with JPMorgan. That's how I foresee it happening is people are just going to build this internally, right? But I'd love to hear your take too there.
It's both. There's going to be buy and build going on. I'm curious to see even the likes of the Bank of New York's, right? They've been very clear. They've wanted to get into custody. Are they going to continue to build, or are they going to buy? Maybe they build, but I think others who will come after them will buy. And so there'll be enough capacity to, enough interest on both sides. So I do still expect there to be buying, not just building.
Last question, keep it a little fun. What's one thing you've either learned or one big takeaway that you walked into this conference and learned?
Well, it's interesting because you would think everybody's competing over the same capital, particularly in the public level. But it's been interesting to watch strategy really embrace the follow-ons, the copycats, even having some of them speak here and whatnot. And I know it's always been very important to Michael Saylor to get corporate treasury adoption. But it's also nice to see him welcome the other platform plays that are trying to emulate him. So I guess, imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I understand that, but it's still, you could still reason that it's competition for the same capital. But that is something, being here, watching the camaraderie of the different players. It's been nice to see.
Yeah, no, I agree. Paul, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.